Right, hello everyone and welcome back to the P. Carroll Sport Podcast. Paul Carroll here, and over the next 20 minutes or so I'll be giving my thoughts on Tipperary against Cork in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. Of course, it was a game that kind of really didn't go Tipperary's way at all from the very start. So if you're a first-time viewer, I commentate games on Tip FM, and I've been at the games and I give my thoughts on the weekly podcast on a Sunday night, Monday morning this week because I was just knackered after getting home from Páirc Uí Chaoimh last night. It was late getting out of Cork, and just when I got back home, I was too tired to record anything. So we're Monday morning as we're recording, and as I said, I'll be giving my thoughts on Tipperary's performance. And we'll run down through it. Of course, loads to get to, loads of talking points from the very minute the ball was thrown in. I'll give my thoughts on all that, player performances, and where we kind of are in Tipperary after the first two games, and just kind of a general reaction. So if it's your first time watching, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's all free. You can like the video, helps us out, and retweet anything on Twitter, that sort of thing, and helps spread the good word, I suppose, about the P. Carroll Sport Podcast. But in general, let's just get straight into it. Of course, last week I was recording the podcast from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, so a different setting here this morning, that's for sure. But good to be back, and lots to talk about. Really disappointing day for Tipperary supporters down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh yesterday, and I'd imagine even a disappointing day for Cork supporters in the fact that, at the end of the day, we all want to be entertained, and yesterday's game wasn't really entertaining for large parts of it. 4-27 to Cork, 24 points for Tipperary. Tipped down to 14 men from the very start of the game. Darren McCarthy received a red card for an off-the-ball incident with Sean O'Donoghue, and from that point it was always going to be a real uphill battle for Tipperary. Cork got 3 goals in the first kind of 17-18 minutes of the game, and it was a long way back for Tipperary from that point. And Declan Dalton got a right good goal in the second half as well to kind of push on and finish the game strong for Cork. So 42,231 people kind of packed out Páirc Uí Chaoimh, ready for what was going to be an enthralling game. Both teams coming off draws in the first round of the Munster Championship. But straight away from the throw-in, there's a lot of pushing and shoving going on all over the field. The ball is thrown in, Alan Tynan puts it over the bar, and referee Johnny Murphy stops the play, kind of runs in. Sean O'Donoghue, the Cork number 4, is down on the ground. As I'm commentating on the game, I didn't see what had happened. I don't think many people saw what had happened, unless you were looking at that particular incident. But I was following the ball and commentating on Alan Tynan's point, and then I see Sean O'Donoghue on the ground. So referee Johnny Murphy goes in, red card for Darren McCarthy, and God, looking at so we were in the press box in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and Michael Dignan and Darren Maloney were in front of us commentating for RT, so we were able to look at their camera screens and just seeing Darren McCarthy walking off and hands over his face and so disappointed, and Noel McGrath, first one out onto the field to help him off, and that was a great kind of image for Tipperary hurling supporters. Well, not a great image in terms of Darren McCarthy getting sent off in the first 30 seconds, but to see Noel McGrath out there kind of just being the elder statesman of the group and helping Darren McCarthy through what was a difficult period for him. The incident itself, so I've heard a lot about it at half-time, at full-time, down in the press room after. There's that pushing and shoving that goes on before a game, and Darren McCarthy does go in and give him a dunt, and if that's seen, then a linesman is going to say to a referee there was a strike in action there, or whatever you want to call it, and it's going to be a red card. I don't think Tipperary supporters, we can have any major complaints about that. Yes, those things probably happened all over the field, and there was the Declan Dalton kind of headbutt thing. To be fair, I wouldn't like to see Declan Dalton sent off for that either, but the frustrating part is that Darren McCarthy was the one that got caught, and he got a straight red card. Maybe against Limerick, similar things were happening. I wasn't at that Limerick game. I just saw what was on TV for that game. But the referee on that occasion just kind of told everyone to get up and get on with it, and then it went on to be a right game. So, look, what I will say is, like I said on my tweet, if you follow me on Twitter, that Darren McCarthy gave him a dunt. If the ref want to give a red card for that, we can have little complaints. But what kind of frustrated me a little bit was, from all the angles I saw, it looks like it was kind of upper stomach, lower chest area where Darren McCarthy gave him the dunt. and Sean O'Donoghue went down holding his private parts, or at least that's what it looked like on cameras, and when he got up he was holding that area. From my viewing, from any angle I've seen, it didn't look like he got hit there, so it would be disappointing if he was kind of simulating that he got hit there. Now, maybe you could ask Darren McCarthy, or you could ask anyone, or maybe another camera angle will come out after this is recorded that shows he clearly did get hit there, but from any of the ones I've seen, it doesn't look like he got hit there. So you hate to see a lad going down like that. Now, I don't want to be accusing Sean O'Donoghue if, as I said, if something comes out, a video or whatever, or that's where he got hit, then fair enough. But that was just a little bit frustrating, because if you did get a belt there at that kind of force, then I don't think you'd be getting up too quickly. Not from personal experience anyway. But that's how the game started. And from that point, you're kind of head in hands thinking this was a tough task at the best of times in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, packed out Páirc Uí Chaoimh against a red-hot Cork team. And now you have 14 men, and how good Cork are with using the ball when it's 15 on 15. You knew it was going to be a tough time. And then the goals started coming in. But just before we move on from that, the game restarted after all that with a puck out. Alan Tynan hit the ball between the posts and over the bar, presumably a point, and it wasn't given as a point for some reason, and it started with a puck out. I don't know, look, that obviously didn't make an impact on the game, but just out of general curiosity, I'd like to know what happened there, because the ball was hit over the bar and the game restarted with a puck out. If the game was stopped because of foul play, and it should have been a free, or else if the game hadn't started at all, then it should have been thrown in again. So whatever happened there, I think a point was either wrongfully wiped off, or else the game was restarted in the wrong manner. But that's neither here or there. Made no significant difference to the game in general, that's for sure. But just a curious one for sure there with Alan Tynan's point that I've marked off here on my notebook that I have while I'm commentating the game, so just the team sheets on it. But for Tipperary, or for Cork, their use of the ball is so good. They're so good running with the ball. Their full forward line is just beyond potent. Like Brian Hayes is, like, the ball just sticks to his hand, and he's huge and he's fast and he's a good hurler. So he's an incredibly hard person to mark. So he got on a couple of balls, flicked a lovely one infield to Tim O'Mahony, who was just making that burst and run from midfield. And Tim O'Mahony in one-on-one, just about in one-on-one, and just lettered it low into the bottom corner. Nothing much Barry Hogan could do there. And that sent the Cork crowd mad. I think it was 1-1, maybe 1-2 to no score at that point. And yeah, you just knew that was only after about 5 minutes, I'd say, and you knew that this is going to be tough sledding here for Tipperary. Patrick Horgan got the second goal. That was a long ball into kind of corner position, and he kind of threw it up as if he's going to hit it over the bar. And next thing, he just cuts inside, bit of a dummy. And I think it's Michael Breen he leaves behind him, and he brings it in at the angle and just letters it goalwards. I think it was one of those ones where if Barry Hogan isn't rushing out, and I think Patrick Horgan was probably too far out to kind of rush out, because then you're leaving the whole goals open, and Patrick Horgan just flick it across to someone to knock it in. So Barry Hogan just stood his ground, and it was one of those ones where you're just kind of hoping the ball hits you and stays out. It did hit Barry Hogan, but it just went into the top of the net. So that was the second goal. Cork well on top at this stage. Third goal came from Alan Connolly. Again, that was on the left side of the field. I'm trying to think which Cork player had it. It could have been Patrick Horgan again, actually, who had it on that left side. And, or was it? I'm thinking that was the time, it was Michael Breen out around the 45. There was kind of a 2v2, and the ball kind of flicked out, played it over the top to one of the Cork players, maybe Patrick Horgan. He plays it across the edge of the square to Alan Connolly. Robert Doyle crashes through Alan Connolly, knocks him to the ground. It would have been a penalty, but Alan Connolly on the ground knocks it into the back of the net. So that was 3 goals in the first 15 minutes. In fairness to Tip, Jason Ford, Jake Morris, these lads kind of kept the fight going. John McGrath as well. Jason Ford had to take up the free taking role with Darren McCarthy sent off. And that's a hard thing to do for Jason Ford. Now, Jason has hit frees for years for Tip and for the Silvermines and for every team he's played for, but it was difficult for him because he wouldn't have practiced in that setting, with the breeze that was around Páirc Uí Chaoimh and things like that. But in fairness to him, I'd say he maybe missed 2, and he probably hit about 12 or 14 maybe frees, I'm not sure, including 65s. But he got some brilliant scores. And Tip, in that first half did have chances. Craig Morgan broke onto a ball. He kind of had to shoot from far out and kind of got half hooked nearly while he was shooting. It was just a nice, handy first touch for Patrick Collins rather than a save. Sam O'Farrell had the big chance. Again, John McGrath shown for the ball really well and just so clever, popped the pass inside to Sam O'Farrell, who made a Tim O'Mahony-esque run down through the middle. And he did the right thing in terms of batting the ball with lads behind him, because he probably would have been hooked, but he had to take it on a bit further. He was kind of outside the 14 as he's starting the bat, and it was a good save. It was a real good connection on the bat. If he was in closer, it probably would have been a certain goal, but it was a save from Patrick Collins for a finish. But yeah, that was a chance for Tipperary that you just would have liked Sam O'Farrell to just take it on a bit further, and he maybe would have rifled it into the back of the net. But you kind of felt Tip were hanging on in there. And in fairness, there was a good Tipperary support there because, well, especially around the press box area, there was a lot of Tipperary supporters left and right of us, and there was a good kind of area of Tip supporters over on the far side of the far stand in the middle of the field. And anytime Tip got something going, whether it was a point, 2 points in a row, there was Tip chance going. You know, there was good support for the team. They were ready to support whatever they were going to see. But they just didn't maybe see enough of things to cheer on. So at halftime, it was 3-13 to 12 points. And yeah, like, these are difficult games to commentate on from a Tip FM point of view, because, you know, they're 10 points down. I think they got it back to 9 a couple of times. I don't think they ever got it back to 8. But when they did get it back to 9, every time the Tip supporters around us were getting loud. But yeah, the second half was kind of just playing out, kind of point for point. Cork were maybe getting a little bit overzealous in possession. And that was to the frustration of the Cork supporters. There was a few terrible balls in. Like Ethan Toomey, I give him great praise after the league final. And that was a really good performance from him. But he hit maybe one of the worst balls into the forward line we've seen this year maybe. It was just out on his own in the middle of the field. And whatever he was doing and whatever kind of run the forward was making, they were off sync, because he just hit it straight into nobody. And I think Ronan Maher was the nearest person to it to mop up, and Ethan Toomey was replaced shortly after by Luke Meade. But you know, he just wasn't one of the standout performers yesterday for Cork. But that was the kind of pace the game was being played at. Tim O'Mahony made a few loose mistakes, just trying one-handed flick passes and things like that in the middle of the field, and that was frustrating the Cork supporters. But on the 68th minute, ball into the full forward line where Declan Dalton had kind of transitioned into Cork forwards moving around a lot. It was Brian O'Mara who was on him, was probably a little bit too behind him as the ball was coming in, so he stood off him. And if you're kind of standing off him, you can't let him go around you at that point. And he kind of bit on a inside kind of feint by Declan Dalton, and he turned back onto his left side and just flicked it up for himself and just leathered it past Barry Hogan. One thing with Declan Dalton is his striking ability is unbelievable. I'd love to see him take a penalty. I don't know if he's taken penalties with his club. I haven't seen one take one with Cork, because Patrick Horgan usually takes them. But his ball strike, and I'd say if Cork had a 21 and they needed someone to leather it to try and score a goal late in a game, you'd nearly pick Declan Dalton. His striking is unbelievable. Again, it was at a narrow angle. It was close to goals. Again, it's one of the ones where Barry Hogan is just going to hope that it hits him well to keep it out. I wouldn't like to be hoping that ball coming at that pace would hit you, but it went in at the near post. You know, it was gone past Barry Hogan before he could even see it, really. I think Brian O'Mara probably had to do a little bit better there, but I'd have to look at maybe the whole play as it played out in terms of how did Declan Dalton make that run. And you know, there's tired legs at that stage, especially for the likes of Brian O'Mara out in that middle third, kind of chasing extra bodies, because Tip down to 14. And it's a difficult one for Tip as well, in the fact that, you know, Darren McCarthy could miss 2 games, depending on what's in the referee's report. He won't miss the under-20s. That has been a question that has been posed by some people. He won't miss any games in the under-20s, so he won't miss. It'll be available for that Munster under-20 hurling final in a couple of weeks' time. But he could get 2 games suspension, and it pretty much feels like he's already missed a game, because he got sent off in the first 30 seconds. So it's a real, it's a proper punishment, I suppose, for Darren McCarthy. And I hope it isn't 2 games, because even they spoke about it on Sunday Game last night. Letter of the law, red card, whatever, but there'd be an awful lot of red cards if every one of those incidents was given, and that's not an excuse or anything like that. But you wouldn't like to see a lad missing essentially 3 games for something that, is kind of let go in other games, if you get me. So, and as I said, we can have no real complaints just with the motion he gave, but I've given my thoughts on that incident, so I won't rehash that. But as I said, it would be a real shame if he misses essentially 3 Munster Championship games for that incident. But that'll be decided in the next couple of days. I'm sure we'll hear about it. I'll maybe get onto the Munster Council myself after this just to get a bit of clarification maybe on that Alan Tynan point, and then just see what the story is with this suspension and when we will know about it. But yeah, that's how the game played out, 4-27 to 24 points. It's again another game in the Munster Championship where Cork have just rattled us for goals and high scores. 4-27 today. Last year it was 4-31. The year before that it was 4-19, and the year before that it was 3-30. So, that's not great from a Tipperary point of view, that's for sure. This one probably has that caveat of Tip down to 14 men so early on. But that's how the game played out, and Cork go marching on. 3 points for them for the first 2 games. 1 point for Tipperary from the first few games. But before we get into an overall player-by-player kind of review of the game from a Tipperary point of view, just in general from Tipperary, after all the noise of yesterday and all the opinions and all the talk and the dust kind of settles on the opening 2 rounds of the Munster Championship, if I was talking to you 2 weeks ago and I said Tip would get 1 point from the first 2 games, I think most listeners and viewers from a Tipperary point of view probably would have said, yeah, we'll take that. And Liam Cowell in the post-match press conference, he didn't say that, but he said that we've 1 point from the first 2 games, and he said, I don't think many people would have predicted that. That wasn't maybe what people expected. So, and it all sets up for the last 2 games now. That's just where we are. It was always going to be probably Tip season defined on the Clare and Waterford games, and I might have even said at the start of one of the podcasts, maybe at the end of the league, that if Tip had anything from the first 2 games, it would be a good thing. So, it is disappointing to get bet 15 points obviously against Cork, and to have Darren McCarthy going to be missing now for the next game at least. But we have a point from the first 2 games, and it's all set up now for that game against Clare. Tip against Clare in Ennis, May the 10th, Saturday night game, 6 o'clock throw-in time. And it's pretty much a knockout game now. The All-Ireland champions could be done on the 10th of May, or Tipperary could be done on the 10th of May, depending on how the game goes. And, I was saying all along at the start of the championship preview podcast and the league end of the league podcast that I just wanted Tip to have something to play for against Waterford on the last day. And it looks like we're going to have to beat Clare if that is going to be the case. And Waterford had a massive win against Clare yesterday as well. And when you look at that Waterford team, like, they've an unbelievable set of players and a really good subs to bring on. So it should be no real surprise. And the fact that Clare yesterday were missing Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell still not involved, Conor Cleary and Diarmuid Ryan not involved. And that's not to take away from Waterford, but that's just to say that Clare should be better by the time they play Tipperary, especially if they have the likes of Tony Kelly, maybe Shane O'Donnell, who knows, and the other 2 that I mentioned as well, Conor Cleary and Diarmuid Ryan. They're massive losses, so if they have them back, they're going to be at pretty much full strength, and they're going to be real difficult for Tipperary, especially in Ennis. But that's for 2 weeks' time. Reflecting back on this game from a Tipperary point of view, Barry Hogan in goals, we mentioned, he did kind of hit a few errant puck-outs, but he had a real difficult day because it's hard enough to find the pockets of space when it's 15 on 15, but when it's 14 on 15, there's not going to be much spaces opening up. He hit a couple of really good ones into space and into Ronan Maher and things like that, but 1 or 2 ones he kind of hit to Noel McGrath were a little bit floaty and maybe just got caught up in the wind. And the goals, nothing really he could do about them. He was second favourite for each of those shots. You wouldn't be expecting a goalkeeper to save any of those really. But that's how his game played out. Just difficult one for him, especially with the puck-outs, as I said, with down a man. Robert Doyle, I thought, was absolutely brilliant for Tipperary. He came out with some ball there in the second half where it kind of bounced in front of him and Alan Connolly, and he was out in front of him and caught it and took it up the field. He was bringing the fight all game. Really, really tigerish defending from Robert Doyle. Might be his best performance for Tipperary so far, and he's had plenty of good ones in his kind of debut campaign here. So he was really good. Owen Connolly got a good point in the second half, actually, kind of surging forward. But they were in that full back line against the best full forward line in hurling. I think you can confidently enough say, in Patrick Horgan, Alan Connolly, and Brian Hayes. And it was a battle back there. It was a struggle for that tip inside back line. Michael Breen as well has been our best player all league, I think, and has been so good for Tipperary. Probably just got caught out with that Patrick Horgan kind of sidestep for the goal, and the second goal as well, or the third goal I should say, for Alan Connolly. That was, I think, it was definitely Michael Breen and maybe Owen Connolly that kind of got caught out in the 45, losing possession. Could have been Brian O'Mara as well. It was a white helmet. I'd have to look back on it. So it wasn't Michael Breen's best performance, but he was on Brian Hayes. Brian Hayes, although he did set up the first goal, only got 2 points for a finish, but it was just a difficult day at the office for that full back line. But Robert Doyle, really impressive. Joe Caesar, of course, didn't start. Some kind of ligament injury to his ankle is what Liam Cahill said. So not sure if he's going to be involved the next day even. He wasn't on the panel yesterday. Oisín O'Donoghue wore number 5 on the bench, and Conor Bowe came in to start. Conor Bowe had some good impressions. He had some really good turnovers in the first half, working really hard. The second half, I suppose, early on in the second half, Tip needed every kind of chance to go their way. And I think the first ball or two that came into Conor Bowe just kind of missed his touch. He had kind of one half chance where he was running across the 45. And I think, did he give off a hand pass, or I'm not quite sure how it finished up for a finish, but the next ball that came in, he kind of missed his touch, and it was kind of a half chance for Tip. So he was replaced by Andrew Ormond. Andrew Ormond came on and just threw himself about, got a couple of brilliant turnovers, got a point, had a goal chance in the second half. It was kind of a timid effort though, from an angle and a bit too far out. One of those ones where he probably had to take it on, but maybe he didn't feel like he had enough time. But he got a good score when he came on, in fairness. Ronan Maher at centre back was yellow carded at one point. It was one of those tackles you have to make where he kind of just wrapped a fella up. Ronan, I thought he did struggle on Darragh Fitzgibbon. Like, Darragh Fitzgibbon got a scandalous score out on the sideline, but it was from a puck out where he just got it first touch into his hand in front of Ronan, and then he just took off. And there was a couple of occasions where Ronan was kind of caught between pushing up on Darragh Fitzgibbon and sitting back, and there was that point that Seamus Harnedy got where it just went over Ronan Maher's head, and it was too far in front of Owen Connolly, and in that gap between them, Seamus Harnedy came in and took it on the 45 and put it over the bar. We didn't see much of that, like, those long puck outs from Cork that are down on top of the D. Usually you see Ronan snap a few of them and come out. We didn't see much of that yesterday. So Ronan Maher's form is always kind of 8 out of 10 at the minimum. And in the last couple of games, maybe we just haven't seen the best of him. So hopefully against Clare now in 2 weeks' time, we see the best of Ronan Maher, because we all know how important he is to this Tipperary defence, and he's really much the centre point of it. Brian O'Mara, after that brilliant game he had against Limerick last time out, I mentioned that the Declan Dalton goal, he was a little bit standoffish and couldn't really lay a glove on Declan Dalton for that. But otherwise, it was just a real battle. It's hard to be too critical of the Tipperary players, because what they all gave was their all. To a man, I think everyone put in a good shift, tried their best, but they're outnumbered and outmatched throughout the field yesterday against Cork. It was a real struggle. Craig Morgan got a good score, was busting forward. He had that kind of half goal chance in the first half. Dara Stakelum likewise was working hard, got a good point himself. He was replaced by Noel McGrath. Noel McGrath breaking the record for the most appearances in a Tipperary jersey in Championship hurling at 74, beating Brendan Cummins' record. So that was a proud moment for him yesterday. He was so good again when he came on. Like, he's just, for the minute he came on, a ball just kind of made its way to him. It was kind of a miss hit from a Cork player straight to Noel McGrath. He was in the right place. Lovely ball up to John McGrath. I think he won a free that Jason Ford put over. But any ball that came to him, there was difficult ones where he's under pressure, just snap it into hand, pop off the right pass. I think he has to start against Clare, because he's one of our best players, and he's just so influential. And the way he plays the game as well, you could see, he kind of plays the game at a different pace, because he's such a good reader of the game. He doesn't have to be sprinting and running and tiring himself out. He's kind of in the right positions a lot of the time. So you think there is 70 minutes in him for sure. So I'd be I'd be having him as one of the first names on the team sheet against Clare, especially with Darren McCarthy out now. You kind of need, another body is going to have to come in, so I'd be looking at Noel McGrath. Alan Tynan got that point. He got a yellow card for what looked like, from my angle at the when it happened, I was like, oh geez, did he hit him in the head there? It was a one on Kieran Joyce, and he came kind of running into it at full speed. But looking back, Johnny Murphy was saying it was the chest. It was probably half shoulder, half chest. A yellow card was probably fair enough, and that's what was brandished to him. I'm trying to think anything else Alan Tynan did by that point at the start, and some really good work rate. I mentioned that turnover. I think it was him, John McGrath, and Conor Bowe turned over. Was it Jeremy Ilrick in that first half? Really good kind of defending and work rate that you'd expect. Jake Morris got 3 points. I thought Jake was really good, showing for the ball as best he could. He had Cork defenders on his back in terms of just touch tightness all throughout the game. He got that point in the second half where he just took it on from outside the 45, took it on, got hooked, lost the ball, got it back into his possession, ran under the arm of Owen Downey, got hooked again, still worked for it, got it back into his hands and put it over the bar with Sean O'Donoghue on him. Like, that was a brilliant score from Jake Morris. His work rate was brilliant throughout. He's been a real leader for this Tipperary team in the last kind of 12, 18 months. And his work rate has just shot up, gone through the roof in recent years. And that was a real kind of example of that yesterday. So Jake Morris, one of the bright sparks for Tipperary. Sam O'Farrell had a tussle with Seamus Harnedy. Seamus Harnedy got booked for it, and the Cork crowd didn't like it, but I had a great view of all that. It was a puck out for Tipperary, and Seamus Harnedy just grabbed nearly a fistful, if not two fistfuls, of Sam O'Farrell's jersey, just not letting him get away or open any bit of space. And Sam O'Farrell, just after trying to get away, just eventually pushed and pulled and wrestles Seamus Harnedy to the ground. The linesman would have seen the whole thing, and he obviously went into Johnny Murphy and said, yeah, yellow card for Seamus Harnedy there. Sam O'Farrell had that goal chance. He was willing throughout. He's been moved around the field. He played that brilliant ball up to Gerard O'Connor for a Jason Ford point late on in the game. And it's a real learning experience for Sam O'Farrell as well. And he hasn't really put much of a foot wrong for Tipperary in his young senior career so far. So you'd imagine next up for him, well, I suppose he'll play against Clare, of course, but then that Munster final will be a couple of days after that Clare game. So that probably eliminates one headache for Brendan Cummins and Liam Cahill, is the fact that Darren McCarthy won't have to worry about playing against Clare in the senior championship, so he'll be fresh for that under-20 final. Willie Connors come on to replace Sam O'Farrell, the first time we've seen him in the championship, and he got 2 points, looked really good, and I think he's someone that can offer a lot to Tipperary, as we've seen throughout the league campaign. He had a really good league, so I'd like to see a bit more of Willie Connors. Darren McCarthy, as we mentioned, red card early on. John McGrath worked as best he could for all the ball that came into him. It was a lot of 75-25 ball kind of in favour of the defenders going into him, because there was kind of more defenders than attackers at that side of the field throughout. But John McGrath worked hard, could have set up a couple of goals. He played that pass to Sam O'Farrell that time for that chance, and worked really hard. There was one time where a ball came in and Owen Downey looked to be kind of manhandling John McGrath with kind of arms wrapped around him, and eventually it was a free against John McGrath. That was a frustrating one. Gerard O'Connor come on, as I mentioned, set up that point for Jason Ford. You kind of wanted Gerard to be in under them high balls, but a lot of the puck outs in the second half were getting hung up in the wind, and it was a situation where Gerard O'Connor and some of the other half forwards had to run to get under the ball. And you kind of need, for someone like Gerard O'Connor, you need the ball down on top of him so he can use his size to kind of keep his man off rather than kind of running in under it. So didn't get on too much ball, did Gerard O'Connor. Jason Ford was really, really good. 15 points on the day, nailed the freeze, was really good from play as well. So you couldn't say anything bad about Jason Ford, and he's been on good form kind of throughout the year when he's been given the ball. So you'd imagine for Clare, he's going to be a big part of this. He's going to be the free taker anyway, and he's going to be a big part of the Tipperary setup. If we circle back to the game against Clare and Ennis 2 years ago, Jason Ford got a couple of goals that day, as did Jake Morris, and Sean Ryan got the other one on that day. And Tip won that game. That was the first Munster Championship game I ever commentated on, and I haven't seen Tip win a Munster Championship game since. So that's been annoying and disappointing. We drew with Cork and Limerick that year, then we lost to Waterford in that game in Semple Stadium. And then, of course, last year we drew at Waterford and lost all the other games. And last weekend we drew with Limerick, and most recently we lost to Cork yesterday. So that has been my experience commenting on the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, commentating. So I'd be hoping that it's more good memories in Cusack Park when Tip get there, or Zimmer Biomet Park Kisog, to give it its proper name. That's on May the 10th. So that's how I saw the Tipperary game yesterday. Loads of talking points. Had a bit of crack with Derek Lynch on Twitter as well yesterday. Derek, of course, with Clare FM, and they're the same owners as Tip FM, so I'd know Derek. So looking forward to seeing all the Clare FM crew in Ennis in a couple of weeks' time for that game, which is just going to be massive. Now that game on May the 10th is going to be huge. You know, like its loser is out of the Munster Championship on the second week of May. Like, how disappointing would that be? It's like, that game is huge. It's just all on the line, really. It's I can't wait for it now. Tip are going to have to go away, lick their wounds. Just judging from Liam Cahill after the game, I think he was obviously disappointed with the result, but still proud of the effort the players put in. And I'd imagine these players will be able to just brush that off momentarily, at least anyway, and kind of brush it off, get back to work, because they know now. I'd say Liam will be kind of hammering the positives into him, that we've a point after the first 2 games. That's not a bad return. It sets us up now for the second half of this Munster Championship. We've a bit of rest, we can get the bodies ready, and then we can go all at this Clare game and see what happens. And as I said, I think Noel McGrath has to start now. Probably there's a good argument to say he should have come in maybe straight away in that first half, in the first 15-20 minutes, just because of how good he is, really, and how he's able to calm things down. But look, if we have a full fit Noel McGrath now for 2 weeks' time, well, then that's going to be a huge positive, and I think he probably has to start that game. And yeah, that's where we are after the first 2 rounds of the Munster Championship. We're bottom of the pile in terms of the score, the leaderboard, not the table. Tip are 5th at the minute, but as I said, you would have taken that 1 point from the first 2 games. So that's how it is. Disappointing day for Tipperary, no doubt, but we're still in the championship, and it's all gearing up for that game now against Clare on Saturday, May the 10th at 6 o'clock in Ennis. And yeah, that's where we are. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, if first time viewing, or if you're a return viewer, like the video for sure, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We've got up past 300 subscribers, so that's pretty good going, if I do say so myself. And it's going well on Spotify as well if you're listening there. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed, and let's hope for better results for the Tipperary senior hurling team when we're reviewing the next game in the Munster Championship. So that's all for me. Have a good week, and we'll chat to you after the Clare game.